One of the most common questions that we've gotten after the trail was about food and how we ate and how we got food in the first place. And if you've read anything about supplying on trail, people talk a lot about sending themselves resupply boxes to post offices or whatever. And that involves pre-planning what you're going to eat throughout the whole trail if you do it that way, and then having to be at certain places to pick up resupply boxes at certain times. And it just becomes a hassle for one thing, because post offices aren't open on weekends and so on. It also becomes more expensive than just going to a dollar store or a grocery store or whatever and picking up food. So we both ended up deciding not to send any resupply boxes, and I think that was definitely the right choice for us.
Yeah, and also, like, you don't know what you want to eat on trail before you're on trail. And so trying to decide at home, what I'm going to eat for the next 4.5 months and packing it all into boxes is really, really difficult. And I've met a lot of people on trail who did do resupply boxes who very quickly, decide they don't want to eat what they're sending themselves. And, they maybe send a message to mum or whoever happens to be sending the boxes for them and say, take this out and put this in. And it just adds so much more complication.
Yeah, like I ended up changing my main food sources on day 2. I was right away done with peanut butter and tuna and tortillas, which I had been eating for months before in all of my practice runs. And then as soon as I got on trail, for whatever reason, my taste changed. And I changed right then and there, really, the first resupply to something completely different. And it turned out that what I switched to was what I kind of stuck with. But if I had prepackaged everything and sent it forward like some people do, I would have been in bad shape. I would have wasted a lot of money or been eating things I didn't want to eat. So
I guess as well for me, like coming from New Zealand, I can't send packages from home, and I don't really have a home base in the US. So there is no one to send me my packages either. So, that kind of stops it. But also both of us never planned our resupplies out. So when I started the trail, I had enough food to get to the first resupply, and I actually didn't know where my next resupply was beyond that.
Yeah,
I didn't plan.
Yeah.
And we did that the whole trail. We bought enough food to get us to the next place, and then that was it. That was as far forward as we looked, and when we got to the next place, then we would figure out where the next resupply was. Okay, we need 4 days food, and away we go.
Which was not what everybody did. Some people planned, weeks in advance in some cases, and then had sort of a structured hiking plan, and then, the number of miles they needed to do each day and so on. But we were kind of more unplanned and less structured than that, which I was happy with.
It worked well for us. It really did. So on trail, my diet stayed pretty similar the whole way through because it was my third through hike. I kind of figured out what I liked and what I didn't earlier on. I ate a lot of candy, a lot of goldfish crackers, Lara bars and other sort of granola bars and things like that. And then for dinner, at the start, I would have ramen or couscous or some sort of pastaroni, things like that for dinner. And that kind of stayed pretty much the same the whole way through. I got rid of my stove at Shenandoah, and after Shenandoah my dinners became simpler. I stopped eating ramen. I mostly ate couscous, or a few times I ate raw ramen, where I just add a little bit of water and flavouring to the cold, dry ramen and eat that, because I couldn't find couscous at places that we were resupplying. But that wasn't my first option of eating. So
once I switched what I was eating for the rest of the trail after day 2, I ended up with ramen for my main dinner almost every night, and sometimes I would add in beef jerky or some kind of preserved meat like that, or TVP after I found out what TVP was.
Which is textured vegetable protein.
Right.
It's a soy protein.
Kind of flavorless, takes on the flavor of whatever it's soaked or cooked with. It's good. I like it now.
It's fine.
It's good enough. And then I ate Pop-Tarts, s'mores Pop-Tarts specifically, every morning. And then candy and chips throughout the day. And we resupplied separately the whole trail and essentially never shared food except for like snacks and things like that. We both came to like Mike and Ike's, so we shared those, but we didn't even agree on goldfish crackers, even though we both ate goldfish.
Like different flavors.
The flavors, yeah. And
candy bars. Like you ate a lot of Snickers bars, I ate a lot of Milky Way.
Yeah.
Even ramen flavors, you would eat chicken or chili, and I would usually go with the Oriental or soy. So, yeah. Yeah,
so we never really shared anything in terms of food. And I actually sent my stove home at the 2-week mark, roughly, at Gatlinburg in the Smoky Mountains. And I realized pretty quickly that I didn't want to do dishes, and I didn't want to worry about cooking. And I very early on got into the idea that I wanted to lose as much weight out of my back as possible. And so that was one easy, quick thing to get rid of, was the stove and the gas. And so what I did was ended up cold soaking my ramen in a Ziploc bag and eating out of that instead of cooking it.
Side note, did you get rid of your stove at Hot Springs? Because you definitely got rid of your pot at Hot Springs. Because you put it on that shelf outside the door at Elmer's.
Yeah, but I still had I sent the stove home with Mom and Dad. I got married, yep. Okay. And I kept the pot because I cold soaked my tea.
You wanted to cold soak tea?
Yeah, actually, the whole reason that I took my stove in the first place was to cook tea in the morning and evening. And I took about a quarter pound or so of loose leaf tea and a tea strainer and everything. And that was like the whole reason that I took my stove. And I never planned, even from the get-go, to cook food. I don't know that I ever did on trail, because I was started out with peanut butter and tortillas and stuff like that for meals.
You did cook dinner for a while.
I might have cooked
after we'd met, you cooked dinner a bit. I was like, well, if you're cooking tea, like, why not cook dinner? And
so I might have tried it a couple of times, but like I said, I only had my stove for 2 weeks, so not very much cooking. And then I cold soaked my tea for a little bit after that until I got rid of the pot at Hot Springs, which is just at the end of the Smoky Mountains, only a few more days of that. And then I ended up getting rid of the tea, actually, which was probably the hardest thing to get rid of, to be honest, because I drink quite a lot of tea, or I did before the trail, every day. And so I got rid of that, and that actually changed that habit even post-trail. I've stopped drinking tea for the most part, even now.
Yeah. So something I learned on the trail, probably on the PCT, actually I learned it, was that it's really important to eat what you want, not what you think you should be eating. So I know, like, a lot of people eat a lot of nuts on trail. They've got the protein, they've got good fats, but I just really don't like to eat nuts. And so I tried on the PCT, carrying a big bag of almonds. And then I just carried a big bag of almonds around because I had no interest in actually eating them. So, although it sounds terrible to eat a diet of chocolate bars and jelly beans, they give me calories and I really like to eat them. And so, I built my diet around what I wanted to eat when I was out there.
Yeah, and so if you carry a bunch of food that you end up not having a taste for, you just don't eat. You turn out like you can't bring yourself to eat something you don't want to after a day of hiking for whatever reason. And so then you don't get calories, and that is definitely worse than not getting appropriate nutrition in other ways. Yeah. So you got to get the calories in because you burn so many hiking, and that's definitely the first goal.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure how many calories I was consuming on a daily basis. I reckon it was probably somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500, which I think is pretty low for a thru hiker. I never really dealt with hiker hunger, which a lot of people talk about being really, really hungry all the time, but it's not something that I dealt with. And I think that kind of played into the fact that I wasn't eating that many calories. But I, based my food around how many items of food I'm eating in a day and how many calories those items are. So by the end, I was eating about 8 snacks of about 200 to 250 calories, and then I was eating dinner. And that was kind of how I planned my resupply. And then also making sure that all of the foods I was eating were at least 100 calories per ounce, or a little bit more if I could, to try and keep the weight of that resupply down.
And I usually ate between 3,500 and 4,000 calories on average per day. And that ranged a little bit, but I did get hiker hunger towards the beginning before I ended up getting sick. And then when I got sick, my hiker hunger disappeared for the rest of the trail after that. But I still stayed up in that high calorie range, which still I think is lower than average actually. Most people probably average closer to 6,000 calories a day. So we were both definitely on the lower end of that. And like chili, I aimed for at least 100 calories per ounce to keep everything very dense, or as dense as possible. But I didn't structure my meals as much as she did. So I kind of calculated how much I wanted throughout the whole day, and then I just picked what I wanted to eat that week or that resupply. And so I always knew I had my Pop-Tarts, which are a set amount in the morning, and I had my ramen, which was a set amount in the evening, and then I kind of just filled in the gaps with candies and chips and things like that that are really calorie dense. And so I guess I kind of winged it beyond that.
Yeah. And I kind of guess, going back from that, I never did breakfast. So I would have a set dinner every night, and then I would just eat the whole rest of the day. So breakfast could be the same as lunch, which could be the same as, the snacks in between, just depending on what I felt like eating.
So I never planned on cooking food on the trail. I started off with the plan of no cook for the whole trail, which involved originally peanut butter, tuna, jerky, nuts bars, candy, things like that, which is something that I had been doing for, I don't know, at least a year of hiking prior to the Appalachian Trail. And then it turned out early on that I didn't want to eat that kind of stuff anymore. And I switched pretty early to cold soaking, which was mostly ramen and jerky.
Yeah, and I started out hot soaking, so I never cooked on trail, and I never planned on cooking on trail. But I used to just boil water and then have foods that I could soak in that. And I kept doing that after you started cold soaking
For a while.
until, Shenandoah, when it was really starting to get really warm and I didn't want hot food at the end of the day. And that was when I got rid of my stove and my pot, and I switched to cold soaking as well. And I kept cold soaking for the rest of the trail.
So there's a lot of talk about cold soaking on trail, and lots of people think that it takes all day, and that you end up having to carry a lot of water around with you. And so one of the counter arguments is that why would you get rid of your stove to save weight if you're going to be carrying around a lot of water weight? And a lot of people do, and that works. You can use a Talenti jar, for example, a little plastic jar, and you can put your water and whatever you're cold soaking, usually noodles, inside that and let it sit in your pack and soak all day. And that works, but it's not really necessary for a lot of the pastas and things, like nothing that we ate. And ramen, for example, you can get to camp and set up camp and then throw your ramen in a Ziploc bag with some cold water, and half an hour is really all it needs to get to what you would expect if you were cooking or heating the water.
Yeah, and the couscous is even less. Like, I would find couscous to be edible after about 5 minutes, but more enjoyable out of maybe 15. So that was a pretty quick cold soak, which, yeah, once again, didn't require, carrying it around all day to let it soak up the water.
Yeah, and in the summer when it's so warm and after a day of hiking you're like so hot, you don't really need warm food as like a soothing meal at the end of the day like you do when it's cold. So I don't really think cold soaking is taking away any of the pleasure of eating food that you would have back at home. So I don't really look at it as a lesser way to eat food by any means. And if you switch over to cold soaking, you can get rid of a couple things in your pack that have hard edges, like your cooking pot, for example, as well as the stove and the gas canister. And so in a frameless pack like we have, that means less things poking you in the back as well. And if you go all the way to using Ziplocs instead of a pot to eat out of, then you have no dishes, which Chile never did.
I never did dishes on the whole trail. The only thing that ever went in my pot when I was using my pot was water.
Right.
And it's like, why? Also, you don't want to be dumping food scraps out of your pot.
Yeah, so it's more leave no trace
Yeah.
as well. So it has several advantages, and I think the disadvantages are kind of overhyped, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of people also are concerned about the texture of the food. I don't know, particularly personally, I'm not interested in eating cold ramen because, I don't know, the texture of that doesn't really appeal to me. But you enjoy it.
Yeah, I don't notice a difference.
You don't notice
really.
it at all. Yeah.
Or I don't care. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I also carried with me some chives and chili peppers.
Yeah.
Yeah, to throw into my Ziploc of ramen. And like I said, I added in some jerky sometimes to kind of soak with that too. So, I fancied up my ramen just a little bit, and then just ate it right out of the bag.
Yeah, I have to say, he took a step further. He didn't even carry a spoon or a fork or anything. I'll see if I can find a video clip of this, because I left all of that video footage out of the whole trail. I could put one in there, though, I think.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. And I used to make weird noises at him as he, just shook a bag of food into his face. So
it works. No dishes, leave no trace.
I used to just lick my spoon clean. That works as well.
Which I find a little bit gross, personally.
That's how I eat now.
So did you have any foods that you were craving on trail?
From time to time, I would crave hot dogs in particular, or a hamburger, which is a little weird because I don't eat hot dogs generally, or I didn't before trail, but since trail, it's become a normal thing for me to eat, which isn't great. But that was the one thing that I would crave on trail. And then once in a while, ice cream.
Yeah, for me, always ice cream. I would eat a pint of ice cream every time we got to town, pretty much.
Yeah.
Or maybe even every night we spent in town. So if we spent 2 nights in town, I'd probably just go with a pint of ice cream each night. Which potentially is making up for calories that I wasn't eating on trail.
Definitely.
But
the only other thing that, other than that, would be a salad once in a while. I would have just crunchy green stuff, or bananas, oranges. Whenever we found oranges at Trail Magic, that was
awesome,
the
really
best
awesome
kind of Trail Magic. Yeah. So fresh fruits and vegetables definitely up there too.